Hi, I'm Karen Morgan. I'm a member of the Executive Council and a fraud fighter with AARP Maryland. And this is Protect Week. From June 10th to 17th, we shine a spotlight on all of the issues that arise with elder financial abuse. And also, we help to give you ideas of ways to protect yourself. This is one of a series of interviews that we're doing with people who've either been affected by fraud or who help to work on fraud issues so that you can have better ways of protecting yourself. Today, we have with us Judith. She is someone who's been affected by fraud. She's a registered nurse. She was the social worker. So she spent her life working for the common good. She's one of those awesome people that you want in your life. But unfortunately, she was affected by a scam. And and these scams have devastating consequences and long-reaching consequences. So we really want to get Judith here to tell her story so that, we can all take steps to sort of avoid this situation to the extent that we can in the future. So Judith, thank you so much for being with us. And thank you so much for being willing to tell your story.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Yeah. Now, and Judith, you were our star at our kickoff press conference during Protect Week too. So, so we're so happy to see you again. So Judith, just give us a brief idea of what happened and when it happened.
Well, I was involved in a FBI imposter scam, and it started with a phone call back in late September, around September 20th, 22nd, something like that, of 23.
Mm-hmm.
And it was initiated from the Rockville Police Department. And then the phone call was transferred to an FBI agent because I was being told that my social security number had been used to open 3 different bank accounts in different states, actually, and that I was being charged with fraudulent use and laundering of money on behalf of a Mexican cartel.
Oh my goodness.
And it was going to be the FBI had been investigating this, and once the investigator came on, the imposter
Mm.
investigator came on, um, he explained to me what they would like me to do because he quoted to me my background, and they assumed that I really wasn't the person, but that there was fraud involved.
Uh,
And the most important thing was going to be for me to get all of my money out of my social security number in cash and then put into a safety deposit box at the courthouse in DC.
oh my
So
goodness.
it all started with that, and he asked if I would be an asset and if I was willing to be non-disclosive about everything because it was an active investigation.
And by asset, they meant that they were asking you to help them with the investigation.
Exactly.
Oh,
And I was going to be contacted daily at 9 and at 6. And it was important that we had a code word. And so he said, what is your favorite color? And I said, oh, beige. And he said, if anyone calls you, you must be sure, and before you say anything, be sure you tell them to give you what your favorite color is.
mm.
In other words, I had to have this password to avoid any fraudulent.
Right. Now, Judith, when you went through this too, didn't you tell me at one point that you checked with the FBI to make sure that these agents were actually there? I mean, that these were
Well,
legitimate agents?
Yes, I did. I on both the Rockville Police Chief Victor Brito and then Wayne A. Jacobs, the director of Washington, D.C. Field Office of Cyber Investigation. I did check this information online immediately while I was still on the phone. And the phone numbers as well as the names checked out. And so, obviously the biggest lesson I take home there is you can't just trust the internet
You
as
can't
being the
trust
only source.
search because
Yeah,
these criminals will co-opt search results too.
right.
So
And
it's,
that I didn't recognize that at all, of
well,
course. And
most of us don't.
FBI, a trusted agency, so I truly did
Exactly.
believe the whole spiel.
As anyone would. I mean,
Right.
it sounds very legitimate.
Yeah.
Um, so so they wanted you to drop off money in the form of cash to them?
Yes, and it was a very long and tedious process because all my money was held in Morgan Stanley Financial Institution in Green Bay, Wisconsin.
Mhm.
Everything that my husband and I had accumulated over the years. So we both had separate IREs, but we did have one joint account. And so the directions from the FBI imposter was I needed to liquidate those funds. And so I did contact our financial person, and then he did give me a story which evolved, and the distribution of my money didn't begin immediately because the Morgan Stanley um, was going to investigate my request, and they
Mhm.
expected me to give them a written statement as to where this money would be transferred, which I couldn't do.
Right.
And
Well, you
and
didn't
I
know.
I was well, I was born scorned to secrecy, and in my own mind's eye, I thought I can be strong about this. The FBI is going to, they know what they're doing, and I can trust that. And so I convinced myself that I could I could do what I was being directed to do.
Mhm.
And so over about a month and a half it took to get the money liquidated. And then I had to put it in like four different bank accounts in the Maryland area. And then I had to make visits to these banks as well as their branches in order to withdraw these funds in cash bundles.
Oh
And
my
then
goodness.
I would, and that was also humiliating because I had to, the story I had to give was I was doing a construction on a piece of property in Tennessee, which we formerly lived there,
Mhm.
and I was going to be creating this Airbnb along with my children, but I had no documents other than an estimate that the imposter sent me. I had several email documents with the FBI logo and all these things
Oh,
on it.
my goodness.
Anyhow,
Did any of the bank officials, when you went to these banks to liquidate your accounts, did any of them question you? Did they
they
ask you
did,
questions?
they did, but nobody pushed it very far.
Mhm.
And the only thing is that when you take out $10,000 or $20,000 in cash, you can't just do it. If you like, my deposits had to sit for at least 7 to 10 days before I could even withdraw the money. And
Mhm.
every day the imposter called to ask how much money I had, where was it, what was in each bank, what were they saying, and tell them this. And so
Ugh.
every single day, twice a day, I had directions as to what I needed to do. It was terribly humiliating.
You were
And
a
I feel,
hostage, Judith. You were a
I know
hostage.
it, I know it. Now I realize that, but I do feel horrible about oh, the whole
You
thing. And But the banks, truly, they didn't pull me aside or anything. And the
Mm-hmm.
investigators at Morgan Stanley tried to intercept it. They locked my internet access for, I don't know, maybe 7 or 8 days. But then my daughter called and said, well, why can't my mom get this? Because she was under the impression that we were getting this out because I wanted to move my money to Maryland
Mm-hmm.
because it was in Wisconsin.
Yeah.
So
Which
anyhow,
makes sense. Well, so can you just tell us briefly what alerted you that this was a scam?
I didn't get alerted until I got a email from Joshua Schaefer at the Office of Attorney General in Baltimore, and
Mm-hmm.
it had a heading on it it was a copy of an email along with his message saying that he was trying to reach me. And when the first message I got didn't have this email attached, and I believed that this was an attorney who was calling me to set up a court date for my for this money that I was supposed to be getting, having a hearing for, having a new Social Security issued, and have my money returned to me.
Mm-hmm.
But as it turned out, I wrote back to him in an email asking if he was going to be my attorney for this court case. And then he sent me a copy of the email from Morgan Stanley. And it was after that that I got a phone call, and he received the email on November 1st, and he never told me about this until January 20th. And so it was during that period that the money was dispersed under
Oh
the
my
auspice of
goodness.
the scam. And
This
that's how
is
I heard about it.
this is just outrageous that this happened to you and that people can be so cruel. So, can you just give the people who are listening an idea of what the consequences, what if what have you what steps have you taken to recover? Have you gotten any support in the aftermath of this horrible event?
Well, the biggest support has been a family that is totally understanding for me. And I'm fortunate. I have 4 living children and a husband who's very supportive. However, he also has Parkinson's, and so this has accentuated the symptoms of his disease.
Mhm.
And the biggest other thing is the AARP fraud groups, which I have participated in ever since February, when when through one of my daughters who was with me from France actually came to be with me, and she was able to find the link for the fraud network, and I was able to get into the support groups, which have been immensely helpful. And I'm just very, very grateful for that. And again, I have my own toolbox as a
Mhm.
therapist. I know about grief and I know about things, but even though I know about them, I still have to practice them myself.
Right, you have to follow your own
Yeah,
advice.
yeah. So I, but I can't say enough for AARP and the intervention that they're doing in this whole area. And the people I've met, hundreds across the country, the losses are just unbelievable,
They're staggering.
unbelievable.
They're just staggering, yeah. Um, so what, what steps can you take at this point to try to recover some of the funds that were lost?
There really aren't any because this criminal is, I think, according to an FBI person who did contact me, not directly about my case, but asked if I would be willing to help him in a investigation on shutting down the call center in India, which is a center that is very often the endpoint of these numbers that are collected and then used for scamming. And my imposter scam from this particular number that was associated with FBI had been used on more than one person. And so he asked if I'd participate in helping with the shutdown of the center in India. And I said, of course, I would be glad to do whatever I could. But this was a real agent who came to my home.
Oh,
and so
well, thank goodness for that.
It was I have no doubts that the FBI are working hard on that as well. However, a lot of the people in my support groups have not found the same support from legal enforcement. And I would say 90% of the time, many of us are made to feel like we're the criminal and not the people that are doing it. And as to recovery, in my case, it was all cash. And I know it's not true, but it could easily be argued that I was so complicit in the laundering of this money that who's gonna be forthcoming about it. We are sending a letter of demand to Morgan Stanley because the investigators, that my impression and perception of them was that the concern was, they mentioned scam and this could be a scam, but what do you say when you are believing you're sworn to secrecy?
Exactly.
For an FBI agent.
By a law enforcement agent. Exactly. What are you supposed to do?
And so they never once, no banker, nobody ever gave me any indication of even just in general government scams, which after the scam, within a few days, I saw the plethora of government agencies that are scammed. I had no idea, but maybe at 80 years old, you just, you don't figure these things happen. I don't know.
Frankly, Judith, you're not supposed to worry about whether government agencies are being scammed or being impersonated, because they're not supposed to be. Like, right. None of this is supposed to happen at all. We are so grateful that you shared your story. And a couple of things I want to get across to our audience. Fraud can happen to anyone. If it happens to you, it's not your fault. I mean, you were minding your own business and dealing with important things when this call came in, and you were trying to do the things that you needed to do and dispense with this call. That's just human behavior. And, so if it happens to you, it's not your fault. The criminals did this. And some of these criminals are in India. So these people are reaching out, not just in the United States, but from countries across the world to target people. And Americans are rich targets. I mean, Judith, as an American, you're a target. I'm a target. And people in some of these countries regard it as heroic to steal money from Americans. And so that's the other headwind that you were coming up against. But the other thing is just, the role of banks, the role of law enforcement. It can get really complicated really fast. We are helping banks, and we're hoping that banks will do more to identify and to intercede when people are withdrawing large amounts of money under what seem to be suspicious circumstances. It's but it's hard because there may be those people who actually are building an Airbnb in Tennessee, and they want their money and they have the right to that. But then there are people like you who, you're doing this and you're telling them what the criminal's telling you to say. But the criminals know that this will work with bank tellers because they can't, there's limited amounts of what they can do to stand in the way of your money. But the program that you refer to is rest, strength, resilience, strength, and time. That's an AARP program with Zoom calls. across from they're free to anyone across the country. And you can talk to people who've gone through the same things and get emotional support that way. So we are so glad that you were able to take advantage of that, Judith. And I
Yeah, I'm
hope it helped a
grateful.
little bit.
Oh yeah, I'm very grateful. The healing takes long, and I'm not sure that I'll ever heal all the way because it keeps getting re-triggered. But that's the nature of the loss of your life savings and the security that you thought you had and you don't.
Yeah.
Mhm.
We're so sorry this happened to you.
Mhm.
It's unacceptable that it happened to you, and we are so grateful though that you are sharing your story, because maybe if someone can hear what happened to you and they find themselves in a similar situation, they might remember and maybe just pause or disengage before they lose all of their money. We have the AARP Fraud Watch Network, and you can see the number on that screen. There are trained volunteers from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Monday through Friday. You do not have to be an AARP member to join. We have aarp.org/MD, which is the website for all things Protect Week. Judith is a big part of that. She is out there protecting you and all of Marylanders with by sharing her story and by taking steps to recover. It's hard, and this is what these criminals maybe either don't understand or don't care about. It's the money, but it's also the consequences that arise from stealing that money. And it's hard to recover from that. I'm hoping that things will change in the future so that it is easier to recover these funds. But in the meantime, we need to get the word out about these scams and about things that we can do to protect ourselves. So thank you so much, Judith.
You're
We
welcome.
so appreciate you sharing your story, for being a part of our Protect Week press conference, and for really helping everyone in the state of Maryland stay safe from financial fraud.
Thank you. Thank you.
And